So I thought that I'd take us back to the questionnaire that you filled out at the time of registration, and how do you envision long-term care 10 years from now? Where are we going to be 10 years from now? So we certainly had some great presentations yesterday with some ideas about where we could be 10 years from now. But I thought I'd take us back to combined what you think 10 years from now long-term care is going to look like. So we had a number of you saying, I really don't know how to answer that question, what it's going to look like. But here's some ideas. A microcosm of society. So that's a very different feel from long-term care today. A place that looks and feels like home, which is what we talked about a lot yesterday. A balance between many things. So this person commented on, we've got the legislation, we got to make it like a home, we've got to make sure we've got quality care, we've got to deal with families. So a lot of things that we should take into consideration and balance them. More dementia than what we're dealing with now. Working with community partners. So maybe we're part of a community. We're not sort of a long-term care home that sits on its own, isolated. More specialized, and it's going to be about quality of life. A more personal experience, maybe a lot more innovation than what we're currently used to. We always talk about we just need money for more hands on deck, but we can't forget that we have to innovate along the way if we're going to make things better in the future. More collaboration, and we heard a lot of you talking about teams yesterday and the importance of that. Very technical and more complex. And we know that technology is always ahead of us, and we seem to be catching up. And just when we bought the right machines and the right bits and pieces, let alone a new version or a new thing comes out. So we're constantly being challenged with the technology, and maybe we will be much more technical than we are today. High care needs. And then there were things resident-directed, person-driven, family-driven model. So if you remember yesterday at closing, we talked about what your answers were, where we saw ourselves on that spectrum from where we're really, much more organization, staff-driven to moving over to the other side, which was being very person-driven or person-directed. And then enjoyment focus, and I sort of had a flashback of that video that we played yesterday where the staff were putting together their scenario of what they believe long-term care may be in the future. Then I rolled up these things, which I thought were 4 very different ways we could go for long-term care. Smaller, very personal, small home-like environments where staff enter as guests. The second sort of cluster was, it isn't called long-term care anymore, just a community where people care for each other. We also had, similar to a hospital, a place where the highest care needs are required. And finally, long-term care has moved out of the health system. It's gone. So I thought those were very interesting comments that we got from you. So where it will go, it's like who's got the crystal ball at this point. But like we talked about yesterday, we can envision that future if we want to, and we can create that future. And finally, just to, for me, and then I'm going to pass it over to Kate, it's really about a shared destiny. I think that's what culture change challenges us. And I love this quotation, and it just happens to be from a former baseball player. If you don't know where you're heading, you're likely to end up somewhere else. And isn't that so true? So let's think about where we're heading, where it is we want to go, and start guiding that. Be that guiding star for our staff. We're all leaders here today. And if we think about where we want it to go, then we're going to have to work as leaders to make sure that we're going in that direction. And that's scary. That's scary for us. That's scary for the staff to try and think about changing what they're doing, because you know what? It's nice and easy to just show up, punch in, and do the exact same thing today as you did yesterday, as you did 5 years ago, as you did 10 years ago. And oh my gosh, do you want to be doing 10 years from now what you did 10 years ago? So we have to think about that. There's no magic formula. So if you're looking for a quick fix, yesterday and a quick fix today. We can't give that to you. We can only share with you pockets of hope, pockets of where people are really challenging the status quo and trying to move forward. We've got to set the course together if we're going to do it. And certainly at the end today, Josie Davernaugh is coming in, and we're going to talk about how we might be setting that course together. Remove the barriers. If there's one thing you can do as a leader is you can remove barriers. And that doesn't mean you've got to dismantle the legislation or the regulations or anything like that, but there's a whole lot of barriers in the workplace. And you as leaders can actually remove some of those things. Think about what Christy Parsons said yesterday when she was talking about Bob Colonan. When somebody came with a question or something, he just answered yes. And then he wanted the solution. So he was removing barriers so that people could get on with trying to figure it out. And you know what? It's okay to fall and skin our knees, because there's no way we're going to figure it out if we don't allow that to happen. So it's going to mean a lot of risk-taking on your part as leaders. And then finally, enable the possibilities. You can do it. You can enable it. Challenge who it is you have to challenge. Challenge the people when you go back to your homes. Challenge your organizations. Challenge those compliance people when they come in. And that's okay if you get a citation. But hey, you've put some new wheels in motion towards change and towards that vision that you have for the future around culture change.